There is a really unique characteristic about this plant that is, you're going to want to add this to your plant collection. And it just really makes this relatively unique plant a little more awesome than the rest of the plants that you might have in your collection. Hi, I am Kim from the Tye-Dyed Iguana plant team, and today we're going to be talking about one of the more unique plants that we have in our shop. It's kind of a novelty plant. I think you'll really enjoy it. It is called a coffee plant, or a Coffea arabica. We have them in two sizes. This one is a little bit larger if you seem to be a little more on the impatient side and don't want to start off with something small and want to go to something larger right away. Then the larger one might be for you. But they are relatively fast growers, so keep that in mind. Native to Ethiopia, they actually grow at altitude, which is something that's a little bit different. There is a really unique characteristic about this plant that is, you're going to want to add this to your plant collection. Now, we call it the coffee plant. It's not like Maxwell House, it's not like Folgers, but it really does produce coffee beans. You're not going to get a lot of these, but it will produce coffee beans that are just absolutely awesome. They start out brown, but they do actually change in color a little bit to the reddish area. But if you're looking for something that's just where you're telling people, hey, I have a coffee plant, at the right time of year, you will start seeing the beans appear, and it just really makes this relatively unique plant a little more awesome than the rest of the plants that you might have in your collection. And these can get to be reasonably large. 7 feet tall could be the largest one. If you use this as an indoor plant and after a while it gets to be a little bit tree-ish or so, and you move it to the side, it can get to be as tall as 7 feet and as wide as 2 or 3 feet. That takes a while. Even though it's a fast grower, it will grow from relatively small to relatively medium in a relatively short period of time, but it's going to take quite a while to get to that big size. When you repot these, they do like to be root bound, so we go from maybe a 2-inch pot to a 4-inch pot, not much bigger than that. Keep them relatively tight, and that root bound part works well. But from a watering perspective, they really like water. Now, you have to be careful that you don't overwater. That has a tendency to happen to some folks when I say they really like water. Probably 2 to 3 times a week, depending upon its location. You can go ahead and water it really well, put one of those little saucers underneath, let it sit there for maybe 15 to 30 minutes, and then go ahead and remove any excess water. Just go ahead and dump that out of the way, and you're going to be doing really well with that. You don't want to let it sit in that saucer. You know, we talk about butt chugging sometimes. Some plants like to suck up through the roots. This is not one of them. It likes the top watering, but it really likes to be kept moist. From a soil perspective, it likes well-drained soil like many of our plants. It also likes the soil that is a little bit acidic. So as you're putting your plant together, you can go ahead and use some really good potting soil, but maybe add a little bit of peat moss. Peat moss has a tendency to be a little bit acidic. You don't want it really acidic. You want just slightly pH below 7 and keep it in that acidic range. It will do a little bit better with that soil. And perhaps if you have a little bit of bark, sometimes it likes that in there as well. It just keeps the soil a little bit more airy and it drains relatively well. From a lighting perspective, it really likes a lot of bright indirect light. You can put it in a south or an east or a west-facing window, anything but north. Your north-facing windows are not going to get much light at all. But when it gets the right amount of light, you can see how nice and glossy and bright green these leaves are. And it doesn't matter whether it's a larger one or a smaller one. It's really one of the really great things about this plant is just the bright colors of the leaves. And you can use these in a variety of different areas, and they just grow very well. So from a lighting perspective, you just need to make sure you have bright enough light. If you get too much light, you'll see the tips start to get a little bit brown. They start to get a little bit crispy, and that means you're just getting too much of that south-facing light. You need to back off a little bit. Sometimes if you have it near a window that has one of those sheer curtain panels, that's really perfect for what we're talking about here. From a temperature perspective, if you're comfortable in your home, this plant is going to be comfortable. We're talking 65 to 80 degrees, give or take. Humidity likes high humidity. So go ahead and mist it. If you have a humidifier, the pebble trays filled with water will work great with this. Toxicity, it's a toxic plant. So keep that in mind, whether you're going to have it as a house plant or whether you're going to put it in a vivarium or in a habitat. It is toxic to pets. You just need to be careful about that. And from a pest point of view, just need to watch as you get into these. Let me get a larger one here. Into the forks or so in between the branches here, you can occasionally get spider mites and occasionally get mealybugs that will sometimes pop up on the back side of the leaf. So you need to be careful about that as well. Propagation is relatively easy. If you have one that's a little more clumpy here, you can just take it out of its pot and very gently go ahead and split the pieces apart, and one plant will become two. Just go ahead and transplant them into the soil. Or if you have a larger plant, and this is really not large enough for that, but you could probably cut it right about here. We're going to have a minimum of 2, maybe 3 leaves on the top part, and you can go ahead and just put it in some water, let it sit there for probably 2 weeks or so until you see those tiny little rootlets appear, and then you can go ahead and put it into your soil. It's just a very, very unique plant, not only from its color perspective, but the fact that it will produce those little coffee beans probably once a year toward the end of summer into fall. It's a novelty plant though. You'll be able to point to those, but you're not going to really be able to have enough to harvest, even if you let that one get a little bit large and a little bit out of hand. We don't get these all that often, so we do have a few of them here in the shop. If you're interested in this novelty plant, I would suggest you come and take a look. We have them in the small size and the large size, 2 different price points. But it really is a pretty plant, a great plant to add to your plant collection. The plant of the week here at Tye-Dyed Iguana, our coffee plant.